Hello, I am Pam Turner. I am an MSW, LCSW, and ABD. I am currently working on my DSW and I am in the dissertation stage, almost finished. This is academic coaching for world changers, and I want to introduce you to some concepts that may be important for you to pass your test. A little about me. I do believe there are 3 stages in life. The first stage of my life, I was about making money and learning and doing everything I could. I learned from mentors. I became a sponge and learned from everybody that I could. I really dedicated those early years to being the best me that I could be. I challenged and pushed myself. The second third of my life, I really have had a great career. I'm a college professor. I'm a professional tutor. I have worked for one of the major tutor companies for many years, and I have lots of experience. At this time in my life, I'm at the third stage, and I'm really about giving back. I realize that new social workers really need to understand the opportunities that they have and the values. You came in this profession for a reason. Let me help you pass your test. What I've noticed in my years of tutoring is that many times you have learned the first, last, etc. question, but sometimes we're missing some content. Okay? So a typical question on the exam may talk about a mother who is able to work longer hours because her 12-year-old daughter is able to stay at home. She's aware of the danger of the daughter. She can make her own meals, and suddenly she's able to look at what to do if there's an emergency. She's able to problem solve. Mom is thrilled because she's got this 12-year-old daughter who can now make decisions, and mom can make more money, bringing money in. So the question, of course, is what stage of cognitive development is she in? We'll come back to that question later, but let's talk about those stages. You all know that when it comes to cognitive development, we're talking about Piaget. And Piaget is one of the prominent theorists when it comes to cognitive stages. Let's not confuse Piaget with our others. We have Kohlberg. Kohlberg is famous for his moral stage of development. And of course, anything that says psychosexual has to do with Freud, and Erikson does his psychosocial stages. So this video is about Piaget's theory, and it really is about test prep for people who are attempting to take the test. Just some interesting facts. I do believe there are some things that you actually need to memorize, but there are some things that you might just want to learn. You've had this information, whether it was in basic psychology when you were in undergrad, or whether you took a theory class as you got into graduate school. Just to remind you that Jean Piaget was a psychologist, and he was also a biologist. He was born early in 1896. He was really actually in college when he was 11. He was extremely gifted. One of the first things he did was he actually worked with the Alfred Binet Laboratory in Paris. I know you're all familiar with the Stanford Binet IQ testing. However, Piaget learned that there were some other issues going on, that perhaps when children were taking the test, that maybe children just weren't there yet. He thought that children liked life experience as a point of reference, so they logically used their imagination to compensate. He additionally concluded that factual knowledge should not be equated to intelligence or understanding. He came up with these amazing 4 stages. He said they were the sensorimotor, the preoperational, concrete operational, and formal operational. So as you're prepared to take your licensure test, do know that these things are really important. Let's talk more about them. So Piaget really believed that sensorimotor was from birth to 2. Those first 2 years of life were very important. The preoperational stage was from 2 to 6, and your concrete operational stage, 7 to 12, and formal operational. So if you're using this to study and compare, do remember that Erikson is the only one who created the stages all the way to adult. All the other theorists really stopped at age 12 and believed that from 12 to adult, adolescence to adult, these things continued. In his sensorimotor stage, When I'm tutoring my students, I really try to get them to understand and to remember, either if they have a nephew, niece, or a child, what it was like when they were 2. So the sensory motor stage is the kids are crawling around. It's sensorimotor. They're getting around and they're using their senses. So whether that be putting food in their mouth or a cigarette butt in their mouth, as my son did when he was 2, that's how they feel the world. That's how they learn. This is cognitive development, and this is how they are processing the world. The preoperational stage is 2 to 7, and that is when those little kids believe in make-believe. In Santa, Easter Bunny, it's a great age because they really believe in some of the stories that we tell them. Concrete operational stage, for many of my students, this is a difficult concept for them to get. So 7 to 11 is a concrete stage where they're not able to actually think formally. And the formal operational stage, again, is 11 to adult, and that's what we see. Just a little more detail about the sensory motor stages. So 12 to 18 months, toddlers are able to explore. They're crawling. If it's your first child, you are so thrilled that they can move. If it's your third, fourth child, you're like, oh gosh, please don't flush anything down the toilet. 18 to 24 months, this is when they're actually able to form enduring mental representations. Many of your children at 18 or 24 months recognize the McDonald's sign. If you've been there a couple of times and got a Happy Meal, they will see the McDonald's sign. They're not able to read yet, but they do know that sign. An example when we are talking about Piaget is he did the object permanence. So this is a child who's looking at the screen. He sees the screen and suddenly it is blocked. He really believes that it's gone. That's that fun stage of peekaboo when you really cover your eyes and you think everyone is gone. Wouldn't it be great as an adult if I could just cover my eyes and the rest of the world be gone? I think that would be a problem as an adult, but for children, that is a normal stage they go through. So again, when the screen disappears, it's totally flat and there's no box. The screen appears again, and for most infants, they are thrilled because they are like, oh my goodness, there is something there that was gone before. Object permanence and the impossible event is the name of the study by Piaget. What he believed when it came to object permanence is out of sight, out of mind. So your infants, if they couldn't see it, you were gone. He did the hidden toy experiment. He did it with children who were 4 months, 4 to 9 months, and 9 months. And in 4 months, they didn't even look for the toy. It was gone. If you can recall your own child or nephew or niece, that they're still very infantile at that age, and it's just gone. At 4 to 9 months, when you hide that same toy, they begin to look for it. Where did it go? At 9 months, they begin to search for the object. That is many times what's so much fun to play peekaboo. Often children will also kind of throw the object on the floor, and if they can't see it, then they are thrilled when you pull it back up. He is known also for the A, not B test. So what he found is that children at 9 months made an error after a half-second delay, and 12 months, the 10-second delay is what they needed to produce the error. And here is the A, not B test. So what he did was he had the parents hide a toy underneath a blanket, and the children had to decide where the toy was. So we know those 4 months old, they didn't look at all. As they got older, then they began to look. So that's the A, not B test. His next stage is preoperational, and that is when those children are not quite operational, and the ultimate goal is to be operational. So he believed that at this age, children were egocentric, and I think we know that. The world survives, the world is about them. That's a normal phase. They believe the sun came up because of them. If at this page, if they're able to express with you anything that happens wrong, the children are egocentric. He also believed that pre-observational children like the understanding of conservation concept. That really means that changing the appearance of objects does not change their key properties. That was something that at that age he believed children could not understand. This is an example of egocentric conversation. The first boy says, "My dad is a policeman." And the second boy says, "I have a big dog. He caught a robber one time. He licks my face." So it really is very egocentric. It's about them. And if you're having conversations with your friends and you are 30, 40, 50, then this is probably not okay. Egocentric conversations should only happen, according to Piaget, in this stage. When I'm tutoring my students, I get a lot of confusion about the concrete stage. So it happens from 7 to 11. Their thoughts really are about the mental operations, and operations can be reversed. They focus on the real and concrete, not the abstract. So, for example, at this point, they really believe that 2 plus 2 equals 4. They're great with that. When it comes to the higher level thinking, as doing some math problems where there's a y, some algebra things, that's really difficult. They're very, very concrete. Many of you have seen the typical one where there are two glasses. One glass is tall, one glass is short, but yet they still hold the same 8 ounces. We do know that children at the concrete operational stage have difficulty with that. Piaget believed that children began to reason logically at this stage. They can solve conservation problems, but their successive reasoning is limited because they're just not there. The thinking systematically remains very difficult. Again, concrete, I always say, like a piece of wood, very hard. Something like 2 plus 2 always equals 4, and that's really good at that age. Some examples also to test that procedure is they looked at the orange drink. So you can see these two are the same. However, the children at this age are not able to understand that these two are also the same because they look different. So again, if they're this way, it's clay, and you all know you can roll out clay and make it different shapes. So if you give kids at that age these same 2 pieces of clay, they're good. You ask them if it's the same amount, and they definitely understand. You begin to stretch it. I apologize. Let's go back. You begin to stretch that clay, and the children do not understand that it's the same. So look at this. Again, in phase 3 of the testing to look at the formal operational stage, they don't understand that it's shaped differently, it's the same amount. And again, with the numbers, the dots on the bottom, they're able to see that they're the same numbers when they look the same. However, when they are arranged differently at that stage, they're not able to understand that. That is the concrete operational stage. So according to Piaget, the last stage is your formal operational stage, and that is ages 12 through adult. And while I realize that many of my people that I tutor are in the soft sciences, counseling, social work, psychology, and may never figure out true algebra, according to Piaget, age 12 through adult really was at a formal operational stage. That's when you can understand that while I might not see a number right there, X has some value. So it's important to know the formal operational stage is where children ended up, according to Piaget. He believed that it was from 11 years to adult. At that point, you're able to think hypothetically. And also you could use deductive reasoning. So as an adult, those are things that should happen that we should be able to use as an adult, according to Piaget. Okay. He also believed that cognitive development culminates in the ability to think abstractly and to reason hypothetically. He believed that the attachment of the formal operational stage, in contrast to the other stages, is not universal. On the test, I've also seen what are some of the issues with Piaget. Of course, although Piaget's theory remained highly influential, some weaknesses are apparent. The stage model depicts children thinking is more consistent than it really is, and infants and young children are more cognitively competent than Piaget's recognitions. So those are some of the people who disagree with Piaget. Also, that we hear that Piaget's theory understates the contribution of the social world to cognitive development. that Piaget's tasks are not culturally biased. But do remember back in the time, they didn't have to be culturally biased. We live in a very different world, but we do know that when he did testing, he did those with primarily middle and upper class children, not of color. Piaget's theory is also vague about the cognitive processes that give rise to children's thinking about the mechanisms that produce his growth. So those are some of the things that Piaget was, some of the proponents of Piaget believed. Let's go back to that original question. And again, so I do agree that you have to know the first, next, and last. Those are amazingly important. However, you've got to get the concepts down first. So the question asks, a mother states she is able to work longer hours because her 12-year-old daughter is able to stay home alone. She is now aware that she's aware of danger, and she can make her own simple decisions. She can now know what to do if there's an emergency, and she can problem solve. So what stage of cognitive development is she in? So sensorimotor, we do know that's the early stage, and she's 12, so that's not an option. We know that preoperational stage, children really can't do that. The concrete stage, an example I like to give at a concrete stage, if mother leaves the child alone and a mother says, do not let anyone in this house, no matter what. At that stage, that concrete operational stage, the child probably would not let grandmother in. Grandmother could be knocking at the door, and the child might say, you cannot come in because mother said no. A child at the formal operational stage would recognize, despite what mom said, she didn't really mean that. So I will let you know that the correct answer to that would be that formal operational stage. So I'll let you know that is the answer of the formal operational stage. I do appreciate you watching my video. And I will let you know that if you're interested for any tutoring in the future, that I am a college professor. I worked for a major tutoring company for many, many years and decided to branch out on my own to save my students a lot of money. My third is about giving back, so my prices are extremely reasonable. And this is the information. My Facebook is Academic Coaching for World Changers, and you can reach me at this. So it's pturner1423@gmail.com, or you can also look me up at Academic Coaching for World Changers. I hope you learned something from the video, and if I can help you pass the test or answer any questions for you, please don't hesitate to ask. Thanks a lot.